So I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to experience a shamanic journey. If you've never done a shamanic journey, a very quick definition or explanation is simply that a shamanic journey is one of the oldest forms of meditation, and it's typically accompanied by a drum or rattle. And the reason for that is because a drum puts your brain into what's called a theta state, very similar to how our brains react when we're in a meditative state, and it is a form of meditation. The idea with a shamanic journey has a few main parts, and a shamanic journey entails an intention. So I always make it very clear what our intention, what your intention is for the journey. And then once the drumming begins, you go to a place called your sacred garden. The sacred garden is often an actual place in nature that you know, perhaps that you've visited or seen. And oftentimes I find that it's maybe a morph or a little slightly adjusted version of that place in nature. So for example, I tend to picture a tree from one of my childhood homes, and it's a willow tree that opens up into a very grassy area that has mountains and things like that, a scene that I actually do know exists. But I've added a few things, okay? Like suddenly there's a waterfall, things like that. So it's really up to you, but the main point of your sacred garden is that it's safe and it's sacred and you feel very peaceful there. So that's the first place that you imagine you go in the journey. So after we start the journey officially, the drumming is going, and you're in your sacred garden. Given our discussion, given what we decide, then you may stay in your sacred garden for the journey, or you may go elsewhere. So all of that is discussed, and I also often give reminders of what you do next in your journey. And I want to also say that with a shamanic journey, what's really sweet is that you may have helpers, you may have guides, you may have deceased loved ones, and you can actually ask these beings to be with you, or they may surprise you and be there to help, to give more wisdom and guidance. The essence of a shamanic journey is the idea of going within to receive answers. It's going within and trusting your own wisdom. But it's often until we get in these states where we're in a meditative state and we're trusting and we're just following our senses, almost as like being in a dream, that we might not be able to quiet our minds enough in our everyday daily life to receive this information, receive these answers. So then as you're doing the journey, the drumbeat changes, and that's when you come back through the sacred garden, especially if you left and went somewhere else upon instruction or just your own experience, and you come back into the room where you are. And then typically it's followed by some moments of writing your experience, because just like dreams, it's so easy to forget those details. So I strongly encourage that you write and record your experiences. So the other part that I want to introduce you to in this video is at the very start of a shamanic journey, there is an element of clearing the space, clearing you, and disconnecting from your day, from anything that's just happened, so that you can be extra clear. And the way that I like to do that is actually oftentimes burning Palo Santo, which is a sacred or holy wood that has a nice sweet smell similar to sage. And I might just cleanse myself, cleanse perhaps my in-person client, and even you if we're doing this via phone or Skype or via computer. And then I rattle, and rattling is really an amazing way to clear yourself, to clear the space, but also to call in the helpers. It's putting a call out to call in any helpful spirits and beings, and I only work with light beings, and I offer protection every time I do a shamanic journey with people and for myself. And the rattling, again, disconnects you from your previous experiences that day, stress, whatever, and clears you in the space. It also calls in the helpers. And this is my main rattle that I use and what it sounds like. And then when we have the drumming going on during the journey, I want to give you just a flavor of the different drum beats that are typical of a shamanic journey and the signals of the drum beat. So I'm going to grab one of the main drums that I use during my journeys. Okay, this is one of my main drums. And when I begin the journey, you hear this kind of beat, and this is the beat that remains consistent throughout the journey. Mentioned earlier that the journey is coming to a close and the beat changes, I typically do something like this. The beat slows down and then you hear a repeated sort of drum beat sequence. Then the beat speeds up, which is when you return to your sacred garden and then come from the sacred garden back into your body, into the space where you are. So those are the general beats. That's the general sequence of a typical shamanic journey. And usually while you're journeying, you are lying down and very comfortable. A lot of people like to wear an eye cover, eye pillow over the eyes, just again to really relax. Use pillows, use a blanket, just be really cozy and comfy and prepare to journey. It's amazing to experience a shamanic journey because again, it's a meditative experience. It's going within for answers. And I highly recommend that you use all of your senses. Some of us are just more visual, so we're going to see more. It might even look like a movie as we experience it. Others might hear more. We might actually hear guides talking to us or hear sounds. We have a very powerful sense of smell. So notice what you're smelling, notice what you can touch, and notice what you can taste. All of the senses, okay, are at work in a shamanic journey, and it's your experience. And no matter what happens, no matter how little happens, how much happens, it's all perfect. Thank you for journeying with me. Take care.